let's do in some fill in the blank. And Marcus, of course, it's going to be Jets heavy. They let me write this one. So I could do a whole show just about the Jets. But we start with the obvious. Sam Darnold makes the Panthers blank better.
2 wins better. They were 5-11 last year. I think they get to 7, maybe 8 wins. I got to keep factoring in that weird 17-game schedule. It's going to take me a minute to do it, but I do think he's an upgrade over Teddy Bridgewater. I think he gives him a little bit more playmaking, somebody who can get outside the pocket and make some throws in the short to intermediate parts of the field. They're not a contender yet, but I do think it makes them a little bit more interesting and fascinating this season.
Can I just remove the blank and just the Sam Darnold makes the Panthers better? I think the how much is TBD. I'm happy for Sam. Like, this is as good of a landing spot as he could possibly ask for when it comes to offensive philosophy with Brady, head coach that I really like in Matt Rule, talent all over the place, running back, wide receivers. Like, on paper, this is like the Jekyll and Hyde compared to what he's been throwing to, what he's been handing to. Offensive line is certainly a concern because I think for him, you want to at least protect him. The Jets did none of this, by the way, in supporting him.
No.
But so I think it's TBD. I think that's the curiosity with this deal. He's made it has. We put a lot of this on the Jets. And I don't think that's necessary. I think some of that's fair. Obviously, the Jets did not support him in a way that was valid. But he also has done some things that I don't necessarily think are just going to completely go away. That said, Brady is a magician. And I think that if there's something to be untapped here, he's going to find it. And I'm fascinated to see what they get.
Yeah, and I think the 2 weapons that they have in DJ Moore and Christian McCaffrey, 2 of the best guys ever at making plays after the catch. So that's fantastic. And then Robbie Anderson actually was the best receiver that Sam Darnold ever had in New York, and now he's the number 2 option. It's a great landing spot for Sam, and I do expect him to play pretty well for Carolina next year.
That was an agonizing loss for me as a Jets fan, and I like a lot of what Joe Douglas has done. I did not get that part of it, and frankly, I think that's great. There's continuity there already, and I think they'll both be happy about that. Okay, shifting to the Jets were blank to trade Sam Darnold.
Forced. I mean, what other option did they really have? Because there's no way that you wanted to keep him on the roster. And I saw the reports the other day about, hey, we could bring in a rookie quarterback and have Sam Darnold. That's just, you weren't going to do that. You didn't want to bring in a quarterback controversy. You had to move on, and to get back what they did, it was phenomenal, even though there wasn't really a market outside of Carolina. So they were forced, but it still was a smart move.
I'm going to say right to trade Sam Darnold. I look, the optimal world, Marcus, is you attach yourself to Sam, you trade out of the number 2 pick, you go down to 8, you go down to 12, you get multiple first-round picks, you get a haul, and you'd get a haul for this, and you just surround Sam with talent. The salary is the driving force behind this. Sam Darnold gets pretty expensive shortly, and that's not a good situation to be in when you're still figuring it out. And I think that's the right call. Look, I'm not a quarterback whisperer. I really like what I've seen from Zach Wilson this year. I think he has a chance to be great, but the way you build an NFL franchise is through the rookie quarterback contract. In my opinion, that's how you establish yourself. And if you could land that, because at some point, whoever your quarterback is, they're going to be expensive. But that's the foundation. You got to keep swinging until you get it. And I don't think Sam Darnold clearly is not going to become Patrick Mahomes. That's a lot to ask. I don't think Zach Wilson will be either. You got to keep swinging. As painful as it is to draft another quarterback 4 years apart in the top 5, I think it's the right strategy here.
And now getting back that 2nd-round pick next year, that'll allow you to continue to build around Zach Wilson. Again, remember, they have an extra 1st-round pick from the Jamal Adams trade. They've got a high 2nd-round pick. You can do enough here to improve the interior offensive line. I think the Jets are in pretty good shape, and now they've got a quarterback, or will have a quarterback, on a rookie contract for the next 4 or 5 years. That's pretty valuable.
I like watching him play. I think it's fun. There's a vibe on the just the general franchise right now, and who knows, because they're still going to be bad next year, but it feels at least like there is some direction finally. Another intriguing piece of this, of course, is Carolina's former, I assume to be former starting quarterback, Teddy Bridgewater. So I ask you, Marcus, Teddy is a blank next season.
backup. I mean, I know you're asking me for a team, but
Well
I just
played,
don't know
sir.
what team it is yet, right? I think there's a lot of teams, once he's eventually cut, maybe he gets traded, but that salary is so ridiculous. Once he is eventually cut, would be interested in bringing him in as part of a quarterback competition. Maybe it's in Denver. Maybe he goes to Cincinnati and he's the backup quarterback to Joe Burrow with all of his injury concerns now. I do think there's some nice landing spots for Teddy. It's just not going to be as a starter. He's going to be a high-end backup this year.
It actually, you know, who could use him is the Jets. I mean, like, honestly,
there you go.
I mean, that could have been part. I'm going to throw a few teams at you. Like, what about the Patriots?
Maybe, but I think the Patriots are going to draft a quarterback to pair with Cam Newton.
There's a lot of the pieces have been filled. Like,
that's the problem here.
And that gets back to the original point. The Jets getting a decent return on this. With a lot of the movement already done, there aren't a lot of logical destinations, in my opinion, where I think you hit it. I think I actually think he could stay there. But again, the way the statement was worded yesterday, it seems like, you know, we're going to find a place for him, you know, blah, 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 like fine, maybe that's here. That usually
means
Tampa
Bay?
Tampa Bay could be really good. I mean, financially, who knows how it would work, but I think that'd be a great spot considering you got to protect him. But there's not a lot of logical spots. Honestly, the Jets make a lot of sense if Teddy comes in and you don't want to start a quarterback early.
There's really not a lot of landing spots where he can compete for a job, right? I think there's a lot of backup spots that are available, just not spots where he can come in and start or even get a fair shot at starting.
I would totally agree with you there. Moving back, we're doing a game of Pong here when it comes to trade quarterbacks. I'd bet blank that Zach Wilson goes number 2 overall.
My life? I mean, it seems like a lock right now. Like, I guess I would be absolutely shocked. The Jets aren't even taking trade calls. It seems like we've known forever that it's going to be Zach Wilson. Seems like that's what all the big media is talking about. I would bet my chances on my life on that one.
I agree with you. The one interesting component of this, Marcus, is the medical aspect of this, because he did have shoulder surgery, and I know, like, I'm not sure where they are in the vetting process. I know with this offseason, it's been switched around. Usually you get that information at the combine. Like, that's like the one element in this that I think is intriguing, because he's not he measured out well at his pro day. Actually, he's a pretty big dude, or bigger than I think we thought he was going to be. Mm-hmm. And I think with that shoulder surgery, that's like the one piece that I haven't heard a ton on, other than, he had this thing done. It'll be interesting to see how he checks out. That's about my only potential concern you'd have with him going other than number 2 overall.
Right. Yeah, I think he's going to be fine, though. I would be absolutely floored if it's somebody other than Zach Wilson.
I agreed. And I think the timing of this at the pro day and everything else makes sense. You were just confirming what the buzz that I've heard is that Douglas really does love Wilson and like Darnold. And again, be interesting to talk to Connor about the dynamics of all of this stuff inside the Jets facility over the last couple of weeks. Okay. And last one, let's go generalized, because we are going to get into draft mode here very, very soon, essentially right now. So let's go general here. Blank is not getting enough NFL draft love.
Justin Fields. I know that's a top talent name, but Adam, I don't get it. This was the number 1 dual threat quarterback recruit of all time for 3 years now. We thought he was a potential option to even beat out Trevor Lawrence for the number 1 pick. He goes to Ohio State. He scores 79 touchdowns with just 9 interceptions. He's dominant. He plays fantastic in the biggest game of the year against Clemson with probably broken ribs. He runs a 4.4 at his pro day, and he might be the 5th quarterback drafted after Trey Lance, who played 10 games or 13 games at North Dakota State, or Mac Jones, who started 11 games at Alabama. It's just, I don't get it. Well, how is this not the consensus number 2 quarterback in this class?
I think that it's an interesting discussion because between Wilson and Fields, they're very different and they flash in different ways. And I think that's an interesting discussion. I know we've had it, but after that is where you lose me, right? Like, after that is, if you go Trey Lance over Justin Fields, to me, that is,
it's bonkers. I don't get it.
I don't get it.
A guy that played 1 game this year did not look good.
No, he played awful. I mean, he played awful in that game.
We had a stretch, it was the first 3 weeks of the season, where Fields had more touchdowns than he did incompletions, playing a Big Ten schedule. I guess I just don't understand how he quickly turned from QB2 to QB5. I don't understand.
No, I'd say this as someone in the number 2 draft spot, like fandom wise, the Indiana game stuck out to me. Big Ten championship stuck out. But you know what? I, I mean, to play my own devil's advocate, Zach Wilson's schedule is not exactly murderer's row, and you could easily dissect certain games over the course of the Coastal Carolina game.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And he had a couple of great throws in that, and a couple of not great throws. Fields in that Indiana game had one of the best throws I've ever seen in the back of the end zone. So I'm with you. I'd say, Marcus, I want to beat the drum. I'll stay on the same team. Trey Sermon. You posted some of the measurables, and we were kind of talking on Twitter of the Josh Jacobs vibes. Not the fastest guy, but really shifty, big-bodied, recovered from injury. I know there's some fun running backs at the top of this class. You could get Trey Sermon. Where do you think he'll go right now as you kind of look at this stuff? Because I've been kind of obsessed with knowing where a guy like that's going to land, because I'd love for the Jets to land him.
Yeah, probably late day 2, maybe early day 3. And listen,
Gotcha.
if it's Najee Harris in round 1 or Trey Sermon in round 3,
exactly.
Listen, if it's Najee Harris in round 1 or Trey Sermon in round 2, I'd still prefer Trey Sermon. There's just not that big of a gap. I love that. He's my 3rd best running back in this class. He's got a lot of I think Arian Foster like vibes.
That's a great comparison.
Puts his foot down on the ground, and then he's downhill, and he's hard to stop. I love him. I'm a huge fan. That's a great name.
It is. And look, man, he didn't have a ton of tread. I mean, with the season they had, with everything else, guy's going to come in pretty fresh. And yes, he did have an injury, but that's an injury. His legs are just fine.